And what we see is emerging in chapter 4 and chapter 5 that we're going through, and this is just the introduction. We're going to spend all next week on this. True believers are worshipers. That's what it says in Philippians 3:3. We're the circumcision. We're the ones that God has given us a new heart. We worship God in the Spirit. So true believers are worshipers. And we see a future picture of all true worshipers gathered around the throne. And by the way, God has told us exactly how he wants to be worshiped in Revelation 4 and verse 8. I'll read it to you. And when the four living creatures, each having 6 wings full of eyes all around and within, they don't rest day or night, but they say, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, who is, was, and is to come. That's the first description of heaven's worship. And what we see is quintessential worship is tied to holiness and tied to God and tied to him in every way. So, we only have 7 minutes. It's a response to holiness. It focuses on God. And by the way, all that's in your notes anyway. So we have a project. Wake up a few people around you that are sleeping because we're all going to stand up in about 30 seconds. So some of you need to bump. I don't want them to be embarrassed. Jesus commanded us to stay connected to our Father. How do we do that? We're doing a group field trip right here, and we're going to in just a minute. As believers facing the end of days, here's what we need from God to make it through life pleasing him. We're going to quote the words together. So everybody stand. Okay, good job. And now watch this. Now don't do anything. We want to do it together. You're going to read the red part, and I'm going to read everything else, okay? So, Jesus shows us how to satisfy our 7 greatest needs. Did you know the Lord's Prayer in Matthew 6 describes the 7 greatest needs of every Christian? The first and greatest need is right here in this beginning. Jesus said, after this manner, therefore, pray ye. He didn't say, quote this. He said, follow this pattern. What is the first thing every prayer should do? Focus on somebody. And a lot of times we just say, oh, dear Jesus, and it's almost like our appendage. And then we get into the real important thing. Did you know there's supposed to be a pause? Because, now everybody read the red words. I need God to focus me. Why? Because we're so distracted. Prayer is how we recalibrate our lives. When I pray, all of a sudden I say, God, I need to focus on you. You're my Father, you're sitting on that throne, you're in heaven, and I want to hallow your name. I bet we'd have fun having that defined in this group. What is hallow? Hallow? It means that we're supposed to set him apart. And so the next biggest need I have, not just for focus, but I need to invite God. By the way, Martin Luther, you all heard of Martin Luther, the great reformer. He said, this is the most terrible thing anybody should say. He understood it. You know what this means? I'm inviting God to take over my life. He said, don't say it unless you mean it. So this is what it is. Thy kingdom come. Now you get to read the red. I need God to control me. You do, and I do too. I hope you realize how much you need that. And then, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I have so many choices. I want to do your will. So, now your turn. I need God to lead me. And what's the very next petition in this? Now, in the middle, there are 7 petitions. This is the middle one, number 4. Give us this day, what is this? Daily? Boy, that's so un-American. We don't want daily bread. We want yearly bread. We want to save enough to last for the rest of our lives. In fact, if we could win the lottery, we'd never have to work and we'd have enough forever. That's how we think. God says, no, I want you depending on me every day for what you need to make it through that day. We are very uncomfortable that way. So do you know what another need is? I need God to supply me. And when he does, you see his power. I was your age, and I went on my first missions trip, and I went smuggling those Bibles I told you about, and I said, Lord, I need $2,000 to go with Brother Andrew and do all that stuff. I couldn't believe. I'd never seen $2,000 in one place in my life. People were pushing it under my dorm room door. I worked as an usher in the auditorium. People were handing me money. God can do unbelievable things. Next, he says, but I can't supply and lead and everything if you don't and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. There's something else I need. I need because if I regard iniquity in my heart, the Lord won't hear me. So if I'm not cleansed, he's not listening to my prayers. And there's something else. There's a problem. The devil's trying to get me in trouble and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. You can't protect yourself. Are you kidding? Satan's the most powerful being in the universe. He's smartest. He's unhindered by walls. He knows everything. He knows every language. And so here's the bottom line. Satan's problem is pride. And God said, if you're going to make it my kingdom and be anything for me, you have to come to the point where you say, thine God, everything is about your kingdom, your power, and your glory forever. It's not about me. And so here's our final need. Now, we only have 2 minutes. You can either sit down for 2 minutes or stand up. It doesn't matter to me. Let me tell you a quick story. What happens when you get in tune with God walking through life, okay? I'm going to tell you about when I was a youth pastor. I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was late Friday afternoon, July 1977. I was a youth pastor. I was training a youth group in personal evangelism. It was 106 degrees in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was so hot, the pavement is melted. When you walk on it, it sinks in. We were in a big air-conditioned church van. There was one house left on the street we were doing, so I was being magnanimous, and I said, you guys stay in the van. I'll go knock on the door, give them a tract, and invite them to church. And because it was hot and I was tired. I jumped out, knocked on the door, put a tract in the door, and turned and was almost to the van when the door opened. It was the saddest, poorest, most hopeless person I'd ever seen on our day, and one look, I knew they weren't interested. So I went back to the door, and the shirtless man listened to me saying, I came here, I'm from Tulsa Baptist Temple, which was the church I was serving in as an evangelist that week. And I said, I'm supposed to share the gospel with you. I said, you're probably not interested, are you? It was hot. I wanted to get back in the van. The shirtless man listened. The woman next to him, when I stood at the door, turned her back. And then I watched her shoulders shake. She finally turned around and said, Donnie was leaving me and our 4 children today, and I asked God to help us, and you knocked on the door just as I prayed. I went, oh, now I feel bad. So I went in the house, shared the gospel with them, and it was with that group, we taught them all that when you led someone to Christ, you knelt with them. So I looked down on the floor. The floor of their apartment had chicken bones and eggshells on the floor. I knelt on my knees in the chicken bones and eggshells. They both wept and cried to the Lord for forgiveness and salvation. They came to Tulsa Baptist Temple on Sunday, showed up at church. They came forward at the end of the service. They were baptized in the evening service, and they got married the next Saturday. That's the power of redemption. And that's the gospel that we share. And it's because we ask the Lord to focus us and control us, lead us. He gives us the grace to keep going, keep us clean so we're not hindered. The Spirit flows. He protects us from the evil one. And when we really live for Him and not for us, when we're humbly emptied, we stay connected to God. And it's the best way to live to the end of your life. God bless you.